Yeah.
Wow, super.
All right. So I guess yeah, we can get started. I think how I wanted to open this was to ask you just why you decided to start speedrunning in the first place. Like how long ago did you start speedrunning?
Okay, so I started speedrunning and streaming at the exact same time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in late 2013, around late October, I would say early November, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most incredible thing to me about speedrunning is, it gives a game infinite replay value because of your want to improve and your want to, get better at the game and master it as a craft. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
And most of the time, you buy a video game, you play it, you beat the game 100%, and then what? You put it in your closet, in your cupboard, and it sits there, it collects dust, and you maybe play it once, twice. That's it, though, right?
Yeah.
But with this, it gives that game that much more life. You take the game and you play it for years and years and years because it's a completely different dynamic, and that to me is what I love about it and why I started it. I
Mm-hmm.
picked a game that I loved as a kid, and now I'm playing it years later, which I never thought I'd do. You know?
Yeah. So was Majora's Mask your first game that you started speedrunning with?
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. All right, that's cool. And then I know you've done Mega Man.
Yeah, I did Mega Man X for a little bit. I started doing that. I think it was Feb of 2016, so that was quite a bit after I started streaming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was a community event that it was like, pick a game and you have 12 hours to learn the game and do a run of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
just, I decided, hey, why not do Mega Man X? That was another game I liked.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I ran that for a bit. To be fair, I haven't ran it in like half a year since like late 2016
Mm-hmm.
slash January of this year.
Yeah.
But apart from those two games, I haven't really been doing too much other than Majora's Mask. But I switch categories. I do any percent and 100%. Lately, I've been doing the 100% category to improve my time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask a little bit about that. So, um, what do you prefer to run, the any percent or the 100% category? I know you've been doing 100% more recently.
Yeah, 100% is definitely the favorite. I like it much more just because, you explore parts of the game you otherwise wouldn't see in an any percent run because you skip so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about any percent is that my time is much more impressive in that category than my 100% time.
Yeah.
And it's just that much more difficult for me to improve it at this point. I really have to put in the hours to try and get a personal best in it.
Gotcha.
Whereas in 100%, I don't have that much of a optimal time yet. Even though I'm still top 5 in the game,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't necessarily mean the time is amazing. And for my standards, I still have a lot of work to do as far as improving it. So I would say because I just like what you do in that category more, combined with the fact that I have to work a little bit less, I would say, to get a lead in that category,
Mm-hmm.
is why I like it more generally.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it seems. So one thing I wanted to ask you about was a bit of the competitive aspect of speedrunning, and I guess you've hinted at it a little bit with like I guess competing against yourself in terms of your own time, and I guess your time compared to other people. So I guess I wanted to ask, like, I know that there's a lot of collaboration and community among speedrunners, but I'd imagine that there's a lot of, or at least some amount of competition too. So, what do you think? Like, what is the competition like between speedrunners, let's say, who play the same game?
It's interesting. I think the speedrunning community is very different when it comes to competition as compared to like other communities like the fighting game community or like FPS or computer like just like League of Legends type of games,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And that's because most of the community is built on sharing where like strategies are found and stuff. It's generally just shared amongst a group of people, and it's not like, oh, we're gonna if someone finds a strategy, they don't just like keep it private in order to get an edge on another person or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's more like an even playing field where everybody just kind of knows everything, all the resources are there.
Yeah.
And I think that with competition, you don't really see too many events in speedrunning, as far as competition goes, most of all the events in this community are usually centered around charity.
Yeah, like SGDQ or yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
AGDQ, SGDQ. I mean, you've got some smaller events, like, for example, Smash the Record, which is happening in September and stuff,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And yeah, there really isn't, I don't know, you can't really do much as far as competition goes because there's just not that many people that can compete in games at that high of a level. It's
Mhm.
just not as abundant as something like a fighting game tournament that has 2,000 people participating in it and stuff. It's more people just scattered across different games, which obviously doesn't work when it comes to a type of competition type of thing.
Okay, so you're saying like
But
something. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I don't know, I was gonna say that most people in general just they speed run to improve their time. There is a little bit of competition where, like, hey, I want to be the best on the leaderboards and stuff,
Hmm.
and my motivation is to beat this person, beat that person. But I would say there's a good balance between people like that and people that just speed run for themselves and want to get a time that they're personally proud of and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think at least my take on it was that like I mean, competition doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, and I think building on what you said about how you like having the even playing field, you share everything with each other. There's a little bit of competition, but it's a lot like let's all improve together. Um, One thing that interested me that you mentioned was the few number of people that are like speedrunning, I guess, any particular game. You mentioned like there's a skill gap or something, or that
No,
there's
it's not necessarily a skill gap. I mean, obviously, it's mostly just how much time is someone going to put in to improve at their game, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, not so much few people, but I would say that, like, for example, I think the most speedrun game in general, I think, is Super Mario 64. I think it has the most personal bests.
gotcha. Hmm.
The most people play that game. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain of that.
Hmm.
And then I wouldn't know what would be a close second or third. Maybe Ocarina of Time or something. But
Hmm.
I would say Mario's the number one, and that one. I mean, if you compare that to any other type of medium, as far as like fighting game or anything like that, it doesn't even come close numbers wise.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you
Yeah.
think makes a game like Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time um, like good for speedrunning? Like, why a lot of people might be running that game?
Man, $1 million question, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. There's so many ways to answer that. I would say the thing about Mario is Mario's popular gaming figure. Like, everybody knows
True.
Mario. Even
Hmm.
people that don't game know Mario. And I think Mario 64 is not only one of the most famous video games out there, but it's one of the most famous video games out there from a famous character combined with a sprinkle of nostalgia.
Yeah.
A lot of people remember playing that game growing up on their N64. They remember the first time they saw Mario in 3D and stuff. And now they're seeing it done at insane speeds with incredible precision movement that has been optimized to its maximum, right?
Hmm.
And it's extremely eye-catching and aesthetically pleasing to watch. I mean, have you seen a Mario 64 speedrun?
Oh yeah, I watch
Oh
Cheese
my
all
god.
the time. So
Yeah, cheese. Like, if you watch it, it's just like the movement is absolutely incredible.
yeah, it's crazy
It's
stuff.
so precise and so fine
Hmm.
that you just want to keep watching because you want to see how he connects all of these jumps and all of these movements into one really really nice, just like, I guess, a star, because that's what it is. You're going for the star.
Yeah.
But an Ocarina of Time, you know, is similar, but at the same time, it's also different because it's not based so much on movement, but more so on crazy glitches and tricks that have been discovered
Hmm.
in the game. So, like, Mario really only has one crazy glitch to use in the run, and that's the backwards long jump.
Yeah.
Whereas Ocarina of Time has tons of different tricks using different items like bombs for things such as hyperextended super slides, infinite sword glitch,
Hmm.
bomb hovering, super sliding, like out of bounds clips, wrong warping. There's so many tricks that absolutely just destroy the game.
Hmm.
to the point where it's no longer played the way it was played by people casually. It's a completely different form of playing the game. You're mastering these glitch techniques in order to accomplish beating the game as fast as you can, right?
Yeah.
So people like both of those different forms of speedruns because on one end you're seeing extremely precise movement, and on the other end you're seeing extremely precise, I guess, also movement combined with really, really cool tricks that aren't supposed to be performed in the game.
Yeah, that's true. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I wanted you mentioned this before about like how speedrunning gives you a new perspective on the game. Like you said that you're playing a completely different game. And I wanted to ask, like, once you've started speedrunning a game, do you ever think about playing it again through without the glitches or the speedrunning strategies?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Honestly, I don't think I'd be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I have so much knowledge on the game
Yeah.
that it's really difficult for me to not abuse that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like when I see if I'm doing something casually and I know that I could just skip through it by doing a simple trick, I'm like super inclined to want to do that. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
have to resist the urge.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
And at the same time, it's like sometimes I wish I get people saying like, "Hey, it's my first time watching a run of this," and I'm like, "Oh man, I envy you." I'm just like, I wish I could delete all my memory of my game just so I could be you right now and watch this run for the first time. Because I remember when I watched my first run of a game like that, I was just completely blown away, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I
yeah,
remember I was watching Cheese's stream and this was the first time like I actually watched your stream because I think he hosted you, and then I think you saw that he hosted you, and you started explaining some of the tricks, and I got hooked on watching, Majora's Mask and watching like Ocarina of Time. So it's pretty amazing to see that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Um,
they're definitely cool, especially the first time.
yeah, and I guess so do you think like so I'm not sure if you've given like how much thought you give to it, but if you have, like as you think about like maybe the stories or the mechanics of these games, like games like Majora's Mask, do you find that speedrunning changes your perspective on the stories in any way, or how the game
You
works?
mean like the lore of the story, like how the actual game?
Yeah, how you think about the world in any way. It's a bit of a like abstract question, I guess, but I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about it.
Not really. I mean, yeah, I don't look at like the levels or the overworld in a different manner or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, one thing I definitely do as someone who speedruns the game and tries to figure out a way to do things quicker and stuff through trial and error or through thinking or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll always keep my mind open for like ways to improve something by looking at like my surroundings in an area or something. Or if like I do a trick and then like something clicks and I'm like, wait a second, I could probably do this faster if I do this or I do that, right?
Yeah.
So that definitely is something I do now versus before. But as far as like the way I look at the game and stuff, no, it's still the same to me.
Okay, yeah. So different perspectives on the mechanics because you're just looking for new strategies and you're thinking about like I guess how things are laid out, but not the story, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I guess one thing I was also really interested in that I guess to kind of shift topics a little bit was like mindset during a run. And I guess what I mean is like when I say what is your mindset overall during when you do a speed run, like what kinds of things are you focused on or thinking about during a run, or what emotions are you feeling, or any strategies that you use to like mentally help yourself during a run. I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, good question. So a lot of the people in my chat sometimes say, "Hey, man, instead of reading chat, why don't you focus on the run? You won't make mistakes."
Yeah.
And then I shrug my shoulders, and I'm like, actually, I'll probably play worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because after doing it so many times through practice and trying to perform a trick over and over again to the point where it becomes clockwork,
Yeah.
you develop muscle memory, and you can do the tricks without even thinking. You just go on autopilot and the trick does itself because you've done it so many times. You're just used to doing this sequence of button presses to the point where it's just like you don't have to do any kind of thought process behind it; it does itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I find personally, obviously, this might not be for everybody, but for me, and like personally, I think that every time I think too much about a trick, it goes wrong. I mess it up every time. And that's because I'm thinking too hard about it. I'm not letting my muscle memory do the work.
Yeah.
And it leads me to just making like simple little, misclicks and stuff that causes the trick to just not work properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like to do is, I do leave the chat open. I look at my chat. I'm very interactive, not just because it helps me in my run, because it takes my brain away from the setups and it just lets my memory do the work, so I'm not thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
But I also, as a streamer, that's what I emphasize on. I like to be that kind of person when it comes to streaming, be part of my chat, interact and do that kind of thing. So that's definitely the main thing that I do is like I use my chat as a form of distracting myself from all these crazy inputs and stuff so that my muscle memory can kind of do the work for me, and so that I don't think or stress about something too much, and that way I find I play better, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree. I mean, I guess I take a similar mindset when I play tennis or something, and I'm doing a serve, and if I think too hard about it, I mess something up in some way, so I try to just, like, not focus on exactly what I'm physically doing.
Exactly. You just kind of let your body do the work, and
Yeah.
then your mind's just focused on something else to kind of relax you a little bit, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess building on like you enjoying or using your chat to help you during a run, I just wanted to ask, like, does having an audience affect your performance when you
Not
speed
really.
run? So it doesn't? Okay.
No, I mean, like as far as like getting nervous or anything like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any difference you feel like when you speed run or you're just playing a game on your own versus playing a game when you're streaming and you have people watching.
No, for me, it's honestly, it doesn't phase me at all. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
the only time I ever got phased was when I did my first run at a GDQ.
Gotcha.
Because it's unsettling to be, you got 150,000 people watching you.
Yeah.
No big deal, right? You kind of get a little bit of the nerves, but you get used to it over time. And like once you do something like that, having like a couple hundred people, 1,000 people, it's nothing. I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's nothing.
So I guess one thing, so I know that in GDQ, right, it's like it's a no reset run, right? They give you a set time and you just have to do it, and sometimes you have to be a little bit safe about it. So do you think like having the ability to reset a run, like when you're streaming, makes it less stressful or something in some way?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And that's a big part of what the nerves are, because you're doing a run in front of a larger audience than you're used to doing.
Yeah.
And you don't have the ability to just kind of mulligan if you have to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have to complete the run, whether it sucks or it doesn't suck.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's nerve wracking, especially in my game. My game has run killing spots where if you mess up, it's over. You lose minutes upon minutes.
And some pretty bad RNG spots, right?
Yeah, there was actually like that we did a Majora's Mask 100% run at the AGDQ 2016, so a year ago, last January, and that's a 5.5 hour speed run back then.
Yeah,
it ended up being a 5:28, and it's honestly a miracle that the run completed. I was super nervous. I thought the run, something was going to go down where it was not completable, because we would just either have to do a 5th cycle. Normally you do 4 cycles. The cycle is playing, like when you do something within the 3 days system of the game and then play Song of Time to reset to day 1 again.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd normally do 100% in 4 of those cycles, so 4 3 days.
Yeah.
Where we might have had to do a 5th cycle just to get something that we missed. Or even worse, the game could have crashed. There's actually a very low percent probability that you can just get a virtual console crash where the thing just freezes, stops working, and you can't recover it. You lose hours of progress. And in a run in a marathon, what are you gonna do? You can't just start again. You gotta mercy kill.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
It's brutal. So you've always got that really, really, scared feeling in the back of your head that it might happen, and you just gotta. It's like a black hole. You jump in and hope it finishes.
Yeah.
So that does definitely add nerves to it for sure.
I also wanted to ask, how do you think like the cycle, the time mechanics in Majora's Mask affects how I guess like that speed run differs from other speed runs?
Yeah, I mean, it's super unique. Like Ocarina of Time, for example, has a night and day system,
Hmm.
but you can manipulate it with Sun Song.
Yeah.
You can just play the song and it changes from day to night, night to day, whatever. Whereas in this game, yeah, I mean, you only have one shot in these in-game events with the route in order to accomplish it, or you're going
Oh
to face
wow.
a huge time loss or worse, dead run.
Hmm.
So it's definitely unique in that sense because some of the things in the game can only be collected during those moments of the
Yeah.
clock,
Hmm.
and you can't do anything about that. You have to route the other stuff around those moments
Hmm.
because there's nothing you can do about that. So it makes it tricky. And I mean, I'm not a router. I don't personally do any routing. There's a couple of really smart minds in the community. There's a guy named Gigopler, like another one would be Imbued,
Hmm.
Wayfaring Fox. There's a couple names in the community. They've spent a lot of time routing MM 100% and really coming up with innovative, optimized routes to get around some of the in-game events that you have to be there for
Yeah.
during those times. It just kind of confines the run. You have to. There's nothing you can really do around for those things. You have to just kind of get around them.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's tight and like it's been amazing. I remember the record used to be a 513 by Mr. Enop. I don't know if you know Enop.
Yeah, I've
He's
definitely heard
the
of him.
Yeah, he's the current record holder for any and 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, he held the 100% record for quite a while with a 513.
Hmm.
And there was a ton of route improvements made to the point where uh, the record was brought down from a 513 down to a 454
That's
when
crazy.
Trev ran it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's almost 20 minutes of time save
Yeah.
just on route improvements.
That's
You know,
crazy.
I mean, obviously there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but you know
Mm.
what I mean. It's like
Yeah. No, I definitely know
such
what
a
you mean.
big number for that much time to be saved on routing. It
Hmm.
shows you that the game has a lot of potential if you just put the pieces in the right order.
Yeah, it's a big puzzle. That's really cool. Yeah, I guess
Exactly.
I never really thought about I guess like how grave a mistake can be with that mechanic in the game. Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to ask was I guess staying on the idea of like what your mindset is, what you're thinking about as you go through a run. Do you think like your mindset changes over the course of the run, like contrasting how you feel the beginning, the middle, the end of a run,
Mm,
like nerves or
usually at the beginning, I'm pretty calm and collected because it's the beginning. If I have a really good run going, I know I have a really long way to go,
hmm
so I don't feel like the pressure of like keeping a lead or anything like that. I'm just kind of chill about it.
hmm
But if I'm near the end and I know that I'm ahead and I know that I could choke it, then I get nervous because it's like I've made all this progress. I don't want to just make a mistake and kill the run.
yeah, yeah,
So
that
I mean, yeah, there is that, but
hmm
um, the only way to really practice nerves is to just kind of you can't just practice that end game to get good at it to the point where it's like, okay, I'm good at it now. You have to practice it, and then you have to be nervous in a run and know what that feeling is like,
yeah,
you know,
that's true.
so that you can play under those conditions.
hmm Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess so. The reason I brought that up is, I guess to transition to the last big topic I wanted to hit on, which is kind of, I guess I think I mentioned it in the email. I was interested in comparing and contrasting, um, speed running with like physically running in a race or something. And one of the differences I was thinking about was mindset changes because I know that like when I've talked to people who run marathons or when I've run like a half marathon, um, that I find that your mindset at the beginning is the hardest, and it gets easier as you go. Once you build up a pace, and there isn't really as much nerves going on at the end. And when I thought about speed running, I thought it was almost the reverse. So I guess just to add to what you were saying. Um,
No, for sure, it is. It is. I mean, I've never ran a marathon before, so I don't really know.
mhm,
But I do know that, like, I mean, I want to speak for everybody, but me personally, from my experiences, I find that the most difficult shift in mind change, or like a mind shift, is definitely towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
and it's for two reasons. For me in particular, obviously it differs from people because it depends on the speed run, it depends on the length of the speed run.
Yeah.
For 100%, for example, or for anything, when you're at the end of the run, you're extremely nervous because you don't want to lose your lead, and there's a lot of things that can snowball effect to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of the coin, it's the fact that that particular run is a 5-hour speed run, and it's very taxing on your head. Like, you get so mentally drained
Yeah.
because there's so much you're doing. It's such a long speed run compared to something that's like 30 minutes or whatever. You can just grind attempts out of it, and it's not that taxing on you because you can take a break.
Yeah.
Whereas like in this run, it's just 5 hours. So for me, by hour 3, hour 4, I'm like dying, man. Like I'm so mentally like I'm like mentally checked out, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah.
And you have to really build that endurance. Endurance is like half the battle, honestly.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get really good at just keeping focused for the 5 hours, you can play super well in the end game. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, people make mistakes in long runs like that. It's because of their endurance, just not holding out till the end.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess there's definitely a huge difference between the shorter games and the longer
Yeah, I mean
games.
that's the main difference. You obviously will probably still feel nerves if you're on a good run, regardless of run length. But I'm just particularly speaking about endurance because you do have to hold out for much longer in a 5-hour run versus like something way shorter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Do you play any sports or any anything in particular?
Right now, I'm not really doing too much actually sports wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to be a professional snowboarder almost.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, I used to teach tricks. I used to be like a freestyle teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a while back. That was before college. I couldn't really commit to the job because school, so I had
Yeah.
to stop with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had the chance at maybe doing that, and I kind of stopped. And then ever since then, I haven't really done too much. Sometimes I do it in the wintertime, but
Gotcha.
while I'll play tennis every now and then. I picked up longboarding recently, actually.
All right. Oh god,
It's
I've
cool.
tried that once and I'm terrible.
Yeah, I like it. I actually used to do it a lot.
Nice.
Snowboarding has made me really good at my balance, so
Gotcha.
it's my kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I mean just to I guess take any perspective that you want, like if it's from a snowboarding perspective or from a running perspective or something. I guess I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about like how would you compare and contrast an experience of, and I guess we've been building on it a little bit on this comparison of like speed running for a long period of time versus like go running a marathon or something. And I guess one comparison that you pointed out is like fatigue that I guess really never completely came to my mind is the degree of mental fatigue that especially comes when you do these long runs. So I don't know. Do you have like any thoughts about how one could like compare speed running with like actual running?
Um, I don't really know, like especially because I'm not really big on running. Like
Mm-hmm.
my favorite exercise form is swimming,
Gotcha.
but like even that, I'm trying to like find some kind of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I think like when it comes to doing those kinds of things, you really just have to mentally prepare yourself to push yourself, even though you're tired, right? Like whether
Mm-hmm.
it's physically or mentally, you have to just push yourself to complete whatever it is you're trying to complete.
Yeah.
And that's really like I think that's the only mutual ground there really is. They're pretty different things, even though they both have the word running in there.
Yeah. I find that when I think about
It's
them
funny.
more, they're very very different from each other.
They
Um,
are. They are.
and I guess like
The one thing being one is you're not even standing.
that is true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because what I was thinking about, while you're running, I guess the the thought experiment that I made for myself to think about this is, let's say that you're a speedrunner on PB pace towards the end of your run, and you're a marathon runner or a swimmer or something, and you're also like you're on some kind of pace to beat a personal best. What kind of pressure do you think those two individuals will be facing, like that are different or the same from each other?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's it, you just want to get that moment, right? That moment of glory, that moment of accomplishment, to feel fulfilled, that you achieved what you sought out to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're near that goal and you know you're in the final stretch and you know that there is a chance that you can screw it up, there's that you get pressure. You
Yeah.
feel nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a real sport, whether it's speed running, whatever it is, it could be a snowboarding competition is another one. If you're if you have to do a crazy trick off a jump and you have one shot at getting the points,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, you can really mess it up, and it's not because you suck; it's because the nerves get to you.
Yeah, and I think snowboarding is a good example because in terms of like, I guess there being some, for lack of a better word, like skillful thing or like some degree of dexterity that has to happen when you're at the end. That you still have these tasks to do that nerves can get the better of you. Or I guess when I was thinking in running or something or maybe swimming, that it's not as much that the nerves affect your performance doing like some complicated thing, but it's more about just having to push yourself physically when you get to the end of it. So.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. But I think my biggest thing is, I mean, obviously it's different for every situation, but
Yeah.
I do my best to just not get upset if I lose a speed run. Like you
Hmm.
just, if you lose it, you lose it, and that's it. You move on, right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
it's not the end of the world, and there's going to be other chances. It's obviously not like a competition to the point where it's like, hey, I need to win this right now, or I win the money. Like obviously that's like a different, just like a different scenario. But
Hmm. That's
when
fair.
you're just doing speed runs and you're just having a good time, and not really doing anything super serious, just kind of trying to improve your time. As long as you keep yourself calm and collected, whether you lose it or not, is, in my opinion, that's the best thing you can do for your mindset. That takes a lot of pressure off because you know that regardless, everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah. That's a very good mindset, I think, to take on it. Um,
Yeah, obviously there's certain scenarios where that doesn't apply. Like again, like a finals in a tournament or something.
yeah. Hmm. But no, that's good to keep a healthy mindset like that. How do you I guess like when you're at the end of like some run where you think like, oh, I do think like I'm on PB pace or something, is and you mentioned that you mentally check out. Do you have any ways that you try to push yourself mentally to like stay involved in the game, not go on some like autopilot or lose focus? Is there anything you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, if I see that if I know I have a shot at bringing it back and getting a personal best,
Hmm.
I will definitely like make an effort to like stay focused and not be in the whole I give up, mode.
Yeah.
But if I know it's like looking pretty grim, I don't really try too hard. I kind of just like go, okay, whatever. I mean, the chances of this happening are like slim to none.
Yeah.
But if I see that I'm on the really good pace and I'm on a good run, and my splits are green, for example, I'm in the lead by a couple minutes, right?
Hmm.
I definitely, that pumps me up. I'm like, all right, let's keep going. Like I'm doing so well. Like why would I even consider, letting my mind do its thing, right? I just
Yeah.
got to keep focused.
Hmm. Like a positive feedback or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Like that gives you like motivation to continue because you've done so well up until this point.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And I guess like when you're in these speed runs, this is just kind of a thought I came up with on the spot. So if it doesn't lead to much, don't worry. But to what extent do you find yourself competing against yourself versus competing against the game? If that makes sense.
that's a good question. I really think that most of the time I'm competing against myself versus competing against the game. I don't really
Hmm.
ever think I'm competing against the game.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that is because, I mean, what would you classify as competing against the game?
Um, I guess it's like you think that there are these certain strategies or something that are hard to perform, or things in the game, like you could even say like RNG portions of the game, and it's like I need these are my hurdles. My hurdles in the game are to beat these things, versus my
Oh, okay.
hurdles during a speed run are to like better my mentality or beat myself and beat my own performances. Does that make sense in terms of?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you brought up the concept of RNG or luck-based events in the game,
Hmm.
and that's definitely something that you have to go in there knowing that it's going to screw you over sometimes.
Yeah.
You can't really. I mean, that's why it's luck-based. It's not always going to be good,
Hmm.
right? And that's another reason why any percent is just so. That's why I don't enjoy it as much as I do 100%, because any percent has the same amount of luck-based events
Hmm.
jammed into an hour and a half as the 100% run does, which is spread over 5 hours.
Gotcha. Hmm.
So you have no room to work with in an hour and a half run because of that.
Hmm.
The second half, it's a 90-minute speed run, and the last 45 minutes are all luck.
Yeah.
So it becomes very draining because you can just play so well,
Yeah.
and nothing comes of it because like you're saying, you compete against the game.
Hmm. Yeah.
Whereas like in bigger categories like 100%, for example, for me, where I know that there are luck based portions, but I know they're not the end all be all of a run, especially because my time isn't as optimized as, say, some of the better runners like Trev or Enop or whatever.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
have so much room to work with. I could afford bad luck and still do okay. You
Hmm.
know, I still have room to work with, whereas in the other category, I just don't. So
Gotcha.
I would say that in 100%, I'm competing against myself more than the game, and in any percent, I'm competing against the game more than myself.
Okay, that's really cool. So you feel like in
Yeah.
100% it's more on you, so that's why you kind of like it more. So you
At this
can.
point, yes, for sure.
Gotcha.
Versus any percent where I'm within a minute of the record in any percent.
Hmm.
So I have maybe a minute and a half time to work with before I feel like I've reached my max.
Yeah. Um.
Like a good way to put it would be Enop's trying to get a 123, or he was.
Hmm.
The record right now is a 1 hour 24 minute 43 second run.
Gotcha. Hmm.
My personal best is a 1 hour 25:42.
Hmm.
He wants to push the game to a 123.
Hmm.
Nobody has one. Nobody has a 23 yet.
Yeah.
On paper, 23 is possible, and he's been on 23 pace for the first half of the run. I couldn't even count him. That's how many times he's done it. He's a very, very good player.
Yeah.
And every time he gets it, something happens in the second half that kills his 123.
Mm. Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost unrealistic.
Hmm.
And it just really puts into perspective how much you're playing against the game in that category versus yourself. Because if that wasn't a thing, he would have had it by now.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's interesting. All right. Um. Yeah. I mean, so I know you mentioned like you still want to keep improving your 100% time. I mean, um, I guess like what are your future plans with speed running? Like, do you see is it just kind of like this? It's this indefinite thing. You're just gonna keep doing it until I guess it's like not fun or invigorating to you anymore.
I mean, I don't know. I think I'll always speedrun stuff because I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I do it full time now because I make a living on Twitch and stuff.
Yeah. Good for you. Man.
But if I never if I ended up not streaming, I would probably still, or not streaming for a living, I would obviously have to pay my bills doing some other form of work.
Yeah.
Obviously, that would take up most of my time, but I still speedrun and stream here and there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It would just have to be less. But I think, I don't know, as long as I have interest in a game and playing it and enjoy it, I'll always do it regardless. But I definitely want to dive into different games,
Yeah, of course.
like I did Mega Man X for a little bit. I've been talking a lot about doing some Pokemon speedruns. I would love to do Pokemon Crystal at some point.
Oh, awesome.
I love that game, and it's totally different. You're talking about a completely different run comparing to something like MM
Yeah,
or even Mega Man.
Pokemon games.
It's its own thing.
Yeah, Pokemon games amaze me. Like when I've the only streamer I've watched is Gunner, but just like even at like just hearing about them at GDQs, just how much knowledge they have of the game and number crunching everything is pretty amazing
hmm
to me. So
there's a lot of math, believe it or not, in those games.
yeah. Hmm.
And there's a lot of you have to understand like how your stats of your Pokemon affect how you like rolling a kill on a Pokemon, or like getting a high roll or a low roll for
Yeah.
damage, stuff like that. You have to be really good at menuing. There's a ton of luck based stuff because of the way the attacks work,
Yeah, of course.
and even things like spinners in the overworld and stuff.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
which are like the AI computers that like move,
Hmm. Yeah. During a
stuff like that.
during 100% Majora's run, how are you able to keep track of everything? There's so many things that you have to do. I'm just like, is it just internalized by now? Do you write it down, like, or what? In terms of
Yeah, I
remembering
mean,
everything.
at this point, it's all muscle memory. I just know everything. I know the order.
Gotcha.
I know it by heart. Yeah, but
Hmm.
when I first learned it, I used my splits as as kind of like checkpoints, like reminders. I'm like, okay, I'm on this segment. I know what I need to do on this segment,
Hmm.
and then like I know that this particular segment requires getting this, getting that. Just like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then get those things next segment. Okay, this segment requires this 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Yeah.
And I know that this segment's a temple. Like the way I learned the category was I broke down each temple was its own speed run. So I did speed runs of each dungeon
Gotcha.
individually. And I
All
tried
right.
to optimize each dungeon to its maximum. And
Oh,
then
wow.
once I got really good at the dungeons, then I started piecing the route together. And when I would get to a point where I had to put a dungeon into the route, I already knew the dungeon. So I
Hmm.
didn't have to stop, learn the dungeon, and then, continue the route, because that's like super overwhelming.
Hmm.
At least to me it is. So I knew the dungeon already, inserted the dungeon into my routing, completed it, and then kept going with the routing to the point where it was just like almost like a cut and paste
Yeah. All
of
right.
portions of the run to make it one.
What portions of the run did you find the hardest to learn or get better at?
Mm, I think the hardest section of the run is definitely at the end. I
Hmm.
would say the alien segment is probably the most difficult,
Gotcha.
because of two things. One, um, getting to the aliens on time without them killing your run, meaning they take the cow from the barn,
Yeah.
is it's extremely tight. You have to complete the secret shrine in Ikana between getting Blast Mask and getting to the aliens and
Hmm.
killing them in time. And it's a very, very tight window. You have no margin for error, barely,
Gotcha.
like almost any at all. So if you make any single mistake, you have to slow time down, and it's a big time loss.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's just scary because you're 4 hours into a speed run, 4 hours 15 minutes in. You have less than an hour to go, and if you make one mistake and you don't take it slow and save it, your run's dead, just
Hmm.
like that. So it's like a snowball effect. If you play really poorly, your in-game time is too late, and you won't make it in time to the thing.
Yeah. That's a very tight window. Yeah. That's definitely would be a difficult part of the run. I could imagine. Um,
Yeah, it's scary.
yeah, I think, and one other thing that you mentioned, just to I guess go off the idea of having splits. Um, have you tried different, different splitting up the game in different ways to help you along with the speed run? Like, does it help to have shorter splits or longer splits in terms of helping? Is it better to know constantly how much time you're losing or whatever, or do you prefer kind of going for a longer period of time and then kind of checking in with what's my best or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some splits are longer than others.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just pick like important parts, like important items, and make those the segments. Like, and things that like for example, I make Woodfall Temple just one split
Mm-hmm.
because it's a 7-minute segment,
Yeah.
and there really isn't anything in between it that I'm just like, okay, it's worth stopping the timer there, or like pause, or like hitting the segment timer there
Gotcha.
to lock in a time. Might as well just complete the temple right in just one go.
Mm-hmm.
And Whereas like longer segments, it might be better to break them down. So like for example, Stone Tower Temple is like an 18-minute temple
Hmm.
compared to a 7-minute one, which was Woodfall. So
Yeah,
it's twice. It's over twice as long. It's you could do it in one segment, but you might want to reconsider it because you might not optimize the gold splits, which is like your best times, to give you an accurate idea of like how fast you can do it.
that's true.
Because
Yeah. Hmm.
the more small segments you have, the more optimized times you'll clock in because you're prone to make less mistakes in more segments instead of one big segment where you're prone to make a big like some kind of mistake, right?
Yeah.
And then instead of all of them getting affected, only one of them gets affected.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely gives a better depiction of what your optimal or best time could possibly be over like
Right.
in a piece. Yeah. All right. That's the majority of what I had to ask you. I had a couple more questions, but I think you've already um covered them. I guess one last thing that I wanted to ask is so how would you compare the experience of speed running versus like a racing game or something? And I know that's like a very crude, like a very, very crude comparison. And I guess I'm doing this crude comparison because I want to hear kind of what you think are the differences between just kind of like a race or something and what speedrunning is and means to you.
Mm, like a race? You
Like a,
mean like a race including several people?
no, I mean like a racing game or something like that. Like the idea of comparing a racing game to a one-player game that you got that like through speedrunning you kind of make it into um a racing game for lack of a better way of saying it. Does that make sense?
Hmm. I mean, I would say that here's what I've always pictured speedrunning like.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever play Mario Kart 64?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the time trials?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how like if you do a time trial and then you redo it, you can race your ghost
Yes.
and you can see like your past run?
Yeah.
So okay, so I every time I speed run, I picture like a ghost version of Link running through all this shit,
Yeah. All right.
doing like you know what I mean, like doing the run, and but obviously it's not there because it's not a time trial like that, but like that's what it is. Like you're racing your own ghost
Mm-hmm.
of your personal best,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get to the end of the game before it does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I've always seen it. As far as like a racing game goes, like it's kind of comparable to like Mario Kart, like in that way,
Yeah.
with the time trials and stuff. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I feel like they're pretty different.
Yeah, no, of course. That's a really cool comparison. I never
Yeah,
thought about it that
I've
way.
always thought about it like that.
That's funny. Yeah. Um all right. I mean, that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I mean, this was like almost an hour long now.
Yeah,
Um
no problem, man.
to
My
put up
pleasure.
with my questions. I appreciate it.
Sure. So